Добрый день. Вы слушаете меня?
Нам хорошо слышно,
Хорошо,
и
хорошо.
видно доклад, все хорошо.
Ага. Ну, спасибо за приглашение, спасибо организаторам конференции. I will present in English because I'm going to be talking about English, and I think this will be more appropriate. So I wanted to quickly talk about basically the kind of research that we've been doing with Natalia Gennadievna at the Institute of Philosophy and Law in Yekaterinburg. And really we're working at a practical level with texts and in scientific communication, but we're developing an ongoing perspective, also working with many colleagues in different areas of science. So how can I make this to work? So just to quickly introduce myself, I came to Russia about 8 years ago to Yekaterinburg, but before that I was working for over 2 decades. Well, I mean, I've been working as a translator and editor for 2 decades now, and since the time, since I've been working with Russian colleagues, I've been instrumental in translating or editing several hundred scientific papers, and also 2 major monographs for Springer, and mainly working with Natalia Gennadievna, we have published a few articles on linguistics and scientific communication topics, and this is what I want to quickly introduce today as a way to discuss what may be the future perspective for the English language in the Russian scientific space, because I think probably for you as journal editors, that there must be a question in your minds at the moment about that perspective, and indeed, listening to some of the presentations already so far, I'm hearing, for example, suggestions of also using Spanish or Japanese or Chinese as a means of scientific communication. So very interesting to consider multilingual perspectives. Of course, as a native English speaker myself, my work is in producing texts to a native level for publication in international journals. And of course, I'm very happy to continue working in this area. But obviously, we have to be realistic. So back in 2017, 5 years ago, we wrote an article, English as a Means of Scientific Communication, Linguistic Imperialism or Interlingua. And in this article, we noted that the ongoing process of globalization had strengthened the position of the English language in scientific communication at the expense of other languages, including Russian. And that the global dominance of English in science not only confers distinct advantages on its native speakers like myself, but also discriminates against scholars from non-Anglophone societies. This is a kind of ongoing problem connected with globalization. And as a result, a threat arises concerning the loss to humanity of unique culture-specific ways of understanding reality, which in many ways is what science is. So, such as the US and UK, use the global distribution of the English language to advance their competitive advantage in the field of science. And an increased awareness of potential threats caused by the dominance of the English language in scientific communication can be achieved. So this was our conclusion, that rather than kind of everyone rushing to become more anglicized and forget about their original languages, that there can be benefits from translating from one's own mother tongue into a second language, and of course in the reverse direction. And we also noted in our paper that that there had been, and there still are, very impressive advances in machine translation. And I think all translators now, nearly all translators now, apart from perhaps literary translators, are probably using machine translation as part of their workflow. It's an established fact. It used to be controversial, but I think less so now. That it's such a useful research tool that it would be a mistake not to use machine translation as part of one's translation workflow. But it was interesting that 5 years ago or so, Google engineers claimed that their network must be encoding something about the semantics of the sentence, and not just the sentence, rather than simply memorizing phrase-to-phrase translations. And this is because you've got perhaps 100 or more language pairs, but this obviously creates about 10,000 or more combinations, and all of this can happen instantly. So if you're translating from Quechua to Scottish Gaelic or something, there aren't many pairs of phrases in a database, but the computer can kind of reach into its other language pairs and find an equivalent. And this implies the existence of an interlingua in the neural network. So I also recently published a paper about dialogicality and the English language on the theme of Orwell. And the famous writer George Orwell, who is known to everybody, I think, for his dystopian view of the future, noted certain abuses inherent in English discourses, including scientific discourses. And he noted, all issues are political issues, and politics itself is a mass of lies, evasions, folly, hatred, and schizophrenia. And there are issues today, perhaps not so much in scientific journals, but in terms of the popularization of science, where in very many cases, the impression that a layman gets of current scientific discourses, non-specialist that is, such laymen are asked to trust, listen to, or believe in the science. And I think for scientists, this is almost a heresy. But unfortunately, due to the politicization of science, this has become a kind of general impression that the science is something that is established as beyond appropriate criticism. And I hope that we, as scientific communicators, understand really that that's a kind of problem. And it's a linguistic problem.
Tommy, just excuse me for a second. I just wanted to remind that you have about 7 minutes more. Okay.
Yes. Okay, so let's move on. But I thought that this phrase, like a man who takes to drink because he feels himself to be a failure, but then fails all the more completely because he drinks, the English language becomes ugly and inaccurate because our thoughts are foolish, but the slovenliness of our language makes it easier for us to have foolish thoughts. So these are linguistic issues, and they are linguistic issues that apply to scientific communication. We can improve the quality of our scientific communication in a language by, in my opinion, making our language more dialogic. And good scientific writing in my opinion, is dialogic. It involves the reader in a dialogue. It invites the reader to criticize. But this creates a problem because readers may experience various emotions when presented with texts that invite their dialogical participation, not all of which are experienced as positive. And in extreme cases, dialogicality may even result in the overturning of a scientific paradigm or collapse of a political consensus. So another, quickly to touch on another issue in the English language, in developing dialogical context, English texts are quite reliant on the article, that is to say, the and a. And as translators and editors, especially editors of English texts written or translated by non-native English speakers, this is one of the biggest problems. And I think as journal editors, you will recognize that one of the biggest differences between a text which has been edited by a native editor like myself and one which has been written by a competent non-native linguist or researcher is the presence of articles, the appropriate use of articles. And in our paper, we showed how the article system is used to create context in an English text. And of course, the Russian language uses a different approach for creating context and dialogic context. So, and in my view, the choice of definite, indefinite, or zero articles implies the emergence of a dialogic we, and this is often used in scientific communication, where we say, for example, we can see from the figure that, and this is referring to the reader-writer dialogue. We can see from the results that. This is a dialogic we, and I think this is an important factor. We'll get to the conclusion very soon of my presentation, because one of the issues that this raises is that although there is no universal algorithm for teaching or using articles correctly in English, for some reason, machine translation search engines based on neural networks like Google and Yandex seem to make better article decisions than many non-native writers. And I'd like you to consider why that might be the case and how that may be of use. Considering the recent unfortunate developments in the international scene, I'm supposing that the role of English in Russian scientific communication is likely to change to one in which, unfortunately for me, native level editing becomes less important. Nevertheless, and I'm interested to know if you will agree with me, the depth of already developed linguistic competencies among Russian scientists and journal editors, as well as their, for example, Chinese and Indian counterparts, means English will probably predominate alongside Russian for the foreseeable future. And I don't know, again, I'm throwing this open to the floor. I don't know the answer to this question, but is it possible that journals may increasingly move towards a bilingual publication model? Articles will be accepted either in English or Russian. And because more articles are being published in an online format, it becomes easier to present them in a machine-translated, human post-edited form, but possibly with a sign saying that this has been machine translated. Now, of course, anyone can themselves machine translate an article, but I think that there is a big difference between a machine translation that has been checked by a competent editor and obviously any problems fixed, than one which is just kind of done completely automatically. If so, and this is my question to the floor, what principles of scientific writing in Russian or English can be formulated by adhering to which the coherence of a machine-translated text may be optimally preserved? And what I mean by this is, I think certainly we've noticed that some Russian texts can be quite easily, can be machine translated quite well. There are always problems, whereas some Russian texts really don't machine translate well into English. We have a few theories about what those differences might be, and I dare say perhaps
for me
you
the
have some
time
theory. Yes.
Okay.
So I'm just coming to a close. So in my view, in our view, dialogicality is the quality of written communication that invites the reader to participate in the discourse as a skeptical equal, and this is scientific communication. And one important aspect would be parallelism, encouraging dialogicality by encouraging the reader to consider whether two or more items are in a similar semantic class, and this is about sentence structure. Okay, so just leaving that dialogicality and parallelism up there for your consideration, and really all that I would like to do is to say again, thanks for your attention. And
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Я коротко дам синопсис того, о чем говорил Томас, да, потому что, может быть, и звук не очень был хороший, да, но я буквально очень кратко скажу. И на самом деле то, о чем говорит Томас, эти дискуссии довольно-таки начинают разворачиваться сейчас вот в среде научных редакторов, лингвистических редакторов, переводчиков, специалистов в области академического языка, о роли именно вообще английского языка в научной коммуникации, особенно в контексте сегодняшних дней. И мы видим, что действительно некоторые журналы, и Ирина Дмитриевна об этом говорила, начинают искать какие-то другие направления развития, конечно же, да. Но второй аспект очень интересный, то есть это часть моего доклада, который я ввиду времени, поскольку мы вышли из регламента, не буду сегодня говорить, но очень коротко это о том, о чем говорил Томас сейчас. Дело в том, что если мы подумаем о том, как английский язык функционировал в рамках научной коммуникации, мы можем выделить вчера, сегодня, завтра. Вчера было что? Было, конечно, если были публикации на английском языке в российских журналах, то очень часто это был очень плохой английский язык, и о чем специалисты Скопуса и эксперты, когда принимали журналы, очень часто комментировали, а зачастую отклоняли журналы как раз по причине плохого качества английского языка в аннотациях. Потом наступил большой период, в котором мы с вами жили. Вот, допустим, скажем так, новейшая история, когда многие журналы обратились к решению этой проблемы и активно занимались с авторами. Тут бы я использовала по-английски present perfect, и продолжают заниматься с авторами. Это журналы, которые либо обращаются за профридингом к носителям языка, да, либо каким-то образом интегрируются с ними, либо развивают компетенции своих переводчиков. И, можно сказать, завтра. А что будет завтра? И вот Томас говорит о том, что, да, роль именно носителя языка в современной коммуникации меняется. Это уже совершенно однозначно. По многим очень причинам. Но в этом контексте очень важно растить свои компетенции и своих авторов, и редакторского состава. И, в частности, хочу проанонсировать курс повышения квалификации для редакторов, лингвистических редакторов и переводчиков научных текстов, которые, ну вот в частности, я запустила и разработала в этом году, и надеюсь, что с помощью Анри и в коллективе со специалистами мы будем это каким-то образом продвигать, потому что, вот на наш взгляд, это все-таки очень-очень важный момент сейчас, да, то есть поднимать компетенции, развивать компетенции и так далее. Ну и, конечно, Томас говорил о роли машинного перевода. Машинные системы, машинный перевод растут и развиваются совершенно невероятными темпами, мы все видим. Но это те инструменты, которыми мы должны научиться пользоваться очень грамотно. И в данном контексте, наверное, английский язык нельзя рассматривать как именно, грубо говоря, уровень носителя языка, да? То есть это какой-то английский язык, скажем так, который вот Томас в том числе называет как интерлингва, задается вопросом, да? То есть это определенный уровень international English, международного английского, который, возможно, в разных контекстах будет иметь свою культурную специфику у авторов из разных стран. И вот в частности в нашем журнале, вот Елена Алексеевна, я думаю, со мной не даст мне соврать, мы публикуем, и иранских уже прозвучало много каких авторов, но мы не стремимся к тому, чтобы лишить эти тексты культурной языковой специфики этих авторов, да, то есть, да, мы видим иранский текст, мы видим иранскую специфику, и пусть это будет так, да, то есть мы приходим к тому, что есть определенные критерии, то, что мы называем publishability, пригодности к тексту, к публикациям, и вот на них должно базироваться и отбор, и финальная вето, что да, мы считаем, что этот текст пригоден к публикации. Ну и, конечно, вот это, скажем так, может быть, даже и хорошо, что закончилась эта эра, когда бездумно тратили журналы деньги на носители языка, причем часто даже не зная, что это за носители, это, возможно, были не, допустим, профессиональные люди, бывало и такое, но зато у него было, в общем-то, какая-то печать того, что он носитель языка, да, конечно, это будет уходить в прошлое наверняка, и, наверное, это и хорошо, по сути дела. Но это я так интерпретировала, что сказал Том.